In 1968, the first 2 months of 1968, I was in Vietnam in a tank company right on the Cambodian border near Loc Ninh, and it was pretty much of a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation, a war. We were in a war. Well, a typical day, we just go out, head out into the jungle early in the morning and crash through the jungle all day long until something happened. And it was just ungodly hot. It was terrible hot. It was 125 degrees. There were also a lot of insects and snakes, and we had guys captured there and guys killed there, and it was just an extremely unpleasant place. They train you as a tanker to have ultimate confidence in your vehicle, but after you realize as soon as you were in a war that tanks got blown up really bad too. I mean, I saw tanks blowing up so bad that there were hardly even any pieces left to pick up, and you couldn't find pieces of bodies or anything, and they got taken out in every other conceivable way too. There were guys drowned in them and fell into rivers. Guys that got killed in accidents, guys that got run over. If you got clipped by just a track or something, it would rip your arm right off. And that happened to people too. I was on a tank that ran over an American one time. I wasn't driving it, and it wasn't my fault, but I was on the tank. The guys on my tank all knew each other. I was a new guy on that tank. So I asked them if they knew any other people in our company or in the company that we were working with at that time that were from Wisconsin. And they said, yeah, those guys over on that personnel carrier are from Wisconsin. So I thought, well, I think I'll go talk to them and maybe try to make friends. And so I went over and talked to them for about 10 minutes. Then I remember they said, but we got to go now. We got to go out on an LP. And so I said, okay, I'll see you later. And they said, yeah, we'll see you later. And I walked about halfway back across our perimeter, which was about maybe 30 or 40 yards across. And I got about halfway across, and I think a 175 artillery round went right over our head. And it just went whoom, and it hit. And I just stopped dead in my tracks, and I thought, shit, that's right where those guys were going. I just knew it. And right after I talked to those guys, one of them was dead, and the other one had, I think, both of his legs blown off. He was still alive. But anyways, it made me feel really bad. I just thought, geez, what is this? Am I the angel of death here or something, or what? I didn't want to make friends with anyone anymore. I had the friends that I had already, and they weren't doing too well, and I didn't want to make any new friends, because every time you lost a close friend, it really hurt. And it made you more afraid too. I mean, fear is just something that, the fear like that, a normal person in America never has to deal with. It was just day after day after day after day after day, just constant, by the second fear. You were just always afraid, every second of every day. I remember one guy in particular was killed, and he could not accept the situation we were in. He came in later than I did, and he was on another tank, and he was just scared, and he was so scared that whenever the guys on his crew would try to tell him, teach him stuff, he would start crying. And he wasn't stupid, and he wasn't, I mean, he just really didn't want to be in that war at all, and he was scared. Everybody was scared. But he was so scared that he could not face the situation, and he would start crying and everything else. And then after a while, his friends, or the guys that were on his tank with him, just started to schmooze him, you know, and they would tell him to do all kinds of goofy stuff and everything, as long as it made him happy, you know. Like, as long as they didn't tell him the truth, he was fine. And after that point, I knew that he was probably going to die, and he did too. The night before I left, I was getting ready to go out on a listening post in LP. This kid on one of the armored personnel carriers that was about probably 5 feet away from us just sat down and put his rifle underneath his chin and shot himself. And a bullet went right through his head and missed my head by about 2 inches. And I jumped down off the tank, and I had my pistol out of the holster, and I was kind of ready to shoot him. I was that mad. And then I just looked at his face, and his friends were holding him up, and he had a bullet hole coming out the side of his head, and the light was just going out of his eyes. And I just turned around and went back the way I came, and it just made me feel just awful. The only out of the 12 guys that I went into the 11th Cav with, maybe I think 2 of them made it through to the end of when we rotated out without either being killed or wounded. And I did call one of the guys that was my friend the whole time, and went every place that I did and everything. I talked to him for probably 4 seconds, and he knew who I was instantly, and I knew it was him too. I mean, that's how good friends we were. And the first thing he said was, you know something? He said, we were both really lucky, weren't we? And I said, yeah, we sure were. After that, getting home was just, I mean, once I was home, I felt really great for a while, but everything was a lot different, and you realize that you didn't know anybody anymore, and you realize you left all the people that were really close friends behind you. And that left you feeling kind of really lonely, actually, and angry. Just going down to the YMCA in Neenah, and it was, I can remember just thinking, geez, I wish I could just speak to someone here. And I couldn't even hardly talk or anything. Well, it affects every day of my life still, the war does. It's something you just can't get away from. It affects, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, every day of your life it affects. If you don't talk about it, you dream about it. There's not ever one day of my life that ever goes by now that I don't think about it. After the war, I normally think of one day at a time. I just take one day at a time. I hardly ever plan things ahead of time. I don't, I just don't. I just take one day at a time, and I'm just thankful for the day, and that's it.